How are you doing? How are you doing today? Hello, hello, hello. Hi, hello YouTube, hello Twitch. I hope that you're all doing fantastic. It's been a hot second since I've streamed, and every single time that I come back from, like, you know, a little achy breaky, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, but I think I'm doing everything, you know? My mics are plugged in, my camera is on, I'm looking at chat. Hello Kurt, hello Sir Wolf, hello Estigma, Discros, Dibrovsky, Shay, Bobe, Gamer Up the Damned, Hulkzilla, WWJCDO, Mortis, Dux, BNB, Prime Token, hello. It looks like we have a sub tonight as well, but I don't know who subbed. Thank you for the subscription. Thank you for the subscription. Hello. Good evening, Crestfallen. So today, my friends, we have a very fun topic. We are talking about We are talking about the origin of consciousness and the breakdown of the bicameral mind. The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind by Julian Jaynes. So I first read this book, I think probably about 1.5 years ago. It could have been more, it could have been less. And it blew my mind and I loved it, okay? It blew my mind and I loved it. What exactly does bicameral mean? Slow down, BNB. We got a lot to talk about before we get there. We're not even going to talk about the bicameral mind today. We are going to talk about the bicameral mind, but we are going to, I'm hoping that I have the bandwidth to go through this work with y'all kind of slowly, kind of like we did with the Medicis, right? And there's still more work to do with the Medicis, to be clear. But we're going to go bit by bit, okay? We're going to go bit by bit. C's Library, thank you so much for your sub. Thank you. Did this book inspire the latest video? No, it did not. I think the last video actually inspired me to talk about this book. I think that's the way it worked. Because I've been thinking about how how this book is so core to the way that I think about language on a day-to-day basis, and how not enough people understand, I think, the framework that I use when talking and thinking about language. And I just feel like I want to talk. I just need more people to know where I'm coming from. Batsy, thank you so much for your sub. And Hulkzilla, thank you. Thank you so much for gifting 5 tier 1 subs. Hulkzilla. H click use L K click C I dot double L A shk 9. Okay, now I'm interested. Linguistics is my jam. Yes. So this book, okay, there's so much housekeeping. I'm going to do some housekeeping, and then I'm going to talk about a little bit of the context of the book, and then we're going to actually get into chapter 1. Okay, that's the list in my head. And actually, the first thing that we do in housekeeping is saying thank you so much for the sub, Jerome. Thank you, Jerome. Okay, second thing in housekeeping is my mics are still broken, unfortunately. I bought new XLR cables. They are not fixed for home. I can't touch them. So, as we know, I am an ASMR artist. Part of the work of being an ASMR artist is touching the microphones and scratching your head and doing scratchy, combing. But the thing is that my mics are broken even though they're new. And I'm very sad about this. And so whenever I touch them, there's this awful ringing noise. And, it makes me very sad. I don't know. So now that I know it's not the XLR cables, it is either an internal issue with both of my microphones, or it's an issue with my little Focusrite Scarlett interface. Can you get them replaced? Yes. So I've had correspondence with Rode Incorporated, and they want me to pack up my little boxes and pay shipping and send it to them. And then they want to work with them for like 2 weeks and try and repair them and then send them back to me. And I don't feel like it, y'all. I don't feel like it. I've ghosted them. I've ghosted Rode because I really don't feel like doing all that. And I need to do it. I need to do it. I just need to fucking do it. But I really don't feel like it. Because this is almost a good enough sort of situation. You know what I mean? This is like, maybe I just need to settle for this. And that is just part of my nature, y'all. I'm quite undisciplined, and I'm very lucky that I enjoy doing so very much in the world. But when it comes to unpleasant things, I'm really not very good at doing them. And I don't feel like packing up these microphones and making sure they're not damaged, and I'm gonna have to go to Walmart to get the perfectly sized box, or maybe I should just order something from Amazon that's about this big. I don't know. And I'm like nervous about packing it. Like this is like a spoon thing where there's all these little moving pieces that overwhelm me, because I'm really good at making oatmeal because I've done it every day. I mean, not literally, but like I've made oatmeal so many times, and so oatmeal doesn't overwhelm me. but packing these microphones like overwhelms me. The idea of it, and then making a shipping label, and then so I got in a car accident. Oh god. So now I have to like bike everywhere. So I also will have to be like taking these microphones in a little box like on my bicycle to the post office. And like, well, I don't know, like all of this is like overwhelming to me. So I'm like annoyed. I'm annoyed at so many of the prospect of doing so many things. So I'm thinking that maybe this is good enough. And KingCast, thank you so much for the bits. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the bits. Thank you so much for the bits. Thank you for your well wishes. Thank you, chat in general, for your well wishes. I really don't feel like talking about the details of the car accident, but I am fine. Everyone is fine, in fact. And it's all fine. I just don't got a car, and that's okay, because, who needs it? And I got a little e-bike, and it's been pretty fun. So, is there any other housekeeping that I need to do? Am I forgetting anything? Or can we start getting into the book? The cool fun book. I think we can start getting into the book. So, Julian Jaynes, Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. What an awful cover. Someone get this man a PR team. Too bad. Can't do that because he's dead now. But awful marketing. Demento, thank you so much for your prime. Thank you so much. Awful cover, and like this is one of those titles that's like it's the title could be better too. I think this should be a subtitle, and the title should be like of neurons and sparkles. We need a bowl of mac and cheese. We need a bowl of mac and cheeseify this title. And we need to get it on the shelves of Barnes & Noble again. And we got to start selling it. Okay, we got to start selling it. We need maybe of consciousness and origins. There we go. Of consciousness and origins. A bowl of mac and cheese. Yeah. I agree. Rogue Fox Gaming seems a little pretentious. The title should be a hook. The subtitle can be more fancy. Yeah. But it does kind of make sense because this book was not written for the public. This book was written for primarily psychologists, anthropologists, and perhaps philosophers, and maybe linguists and historians. It's a very, wait, am I reading that number correctly? $200? Hulkzilla. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. What the heck? Thank you so much, Hulkzilla. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Hulkzilla. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We can put that towards making Julian Jaynes' ideas more popular. Julian Jaynes is dead now, but he was a genius. Also, Prime Token. Thank you so much for your Prime. Thank you so much for your Prime. Put a pin in your question of how I found this book, Jerome. Remind me. Julian Jaynes is dead now. He wrote this book in the 70s. He was a really smart, academic before then. But the original copyright for this is 1976. I would assume that, his work involving that went into this book lasted decades. I would assume. But I don't know that for sure. But probably his whole professional career, because it is kind of one of those books. And to sum it up, the basic crazy insane thesis of this book is that consciousness, as Julian Jaynes defines it, which is not a normal definition, but as Julian Jaynes defines consciousness, which is what we're going to talk about today, humans didn't have that until a couple thousand years ago. And that for most of human history, definitely over, depending on the, different cultures developed at very different rates, but depending on the culture, by 2,000 years ago, everyone had consciousness, and by 12,000 years ago, maybe some of the first people who had consciousness, but 20 plus thousand years ago, he would say that humans had societies and civilizations, but people were not conscious in the way that he defines it. And instead, we had a bicameral mind instead of consciousness. And the bicameral mind, this is the right brain and this is the left brain, okay? And we're doing this from my perspective. So this is my right, and this is my left. In the bicameral mind, the right brain has a sort of language, an internal language thing that is being perceived as the left on the left brain as orders, instructions, and then the left brain executes. So what the experience of that is as a human is that you hear voices and the gods tell you to do things and then you do them. And then on an anatomical level, what's happening is that your right brain is giving you instructions and your left brain is executing them. That's a very chopped way of explaining it, but that's the basic thing that's going on there. This theory is crazy and very, very different from how most people think about consciousness and the experience of being human. And Cliff Nerds, thank you so much for your Prime. Agan, thank you for your sub. 24 months. Crazy. 2 years. Thank you. And Jose, thank you for your sub. And your drunk IT guy, thank you for your Prime. The concept is common, but we've colloquially reduced it to right brain art, left brain math. Right, which is we're also going to be deconstructing a little bit. And Anonymous, thank you so much for gifting 5 subs. Y'all are going crazy tonight. What's happening? Is this the 4th of July? Did everyone... is everyone just feeling a little bit extra free? Is everyone feeling liberated from the tyranny of the idea of money right now? Sorry for the bonk. I'm so much sorrier for the bonks now that I know, my mics are broken, and I think the bonks are much worse than they used to be. Anyway, Ferome asked how I found out about the book. I found out about it in a YouTube comment. Oh my god. I can't remember the name of the video, but there was a massive meta-analysis study. I don't even know if that's the right word. Report. I don't know. Done where they were looking at genes that were associated with with all kinds of things. So in this, I'm going to call it a study. I don't know if study is the right word because it was looking at a lot of different studies. So I'm thinking maybe meta-analysis, but I also don't know if that's the right word. I don't really know. Maybe I'll use the word meta-analysis, but I don't know. They were looking at, so yeah, there was like a meta-analysis done where they were looking at genes that were associated with all kinds of things, and they were looking at, hair color, eye color, smoking, but then they were also looking at things that were psychological, like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, and addictive tendencies and suicidality and like all kinds of things. So we don't know which genes are, or even if genes like cause these things, but we can look at groupings of genes and some specific genes and say like, okay, these genes are correlated with these, right? So there's a meta-analysis done, and this was like within the past 3 or 4 years, but I can't remember exactly when. But one of the things that was discovered through this meta-analysis was that the genes associated with schizophrenia, I just said schizophrenia, which is kind of funny, schizophrenia, were much, much more common like 6,000+ years ago. And what does that mean? Why was schizophrenia being selected for? And also, schizophrenia, the way we think of it, is it's like a modern construct, and the genes associated with it might not have been presenting the same way then as they present the same way now. We don't know that these people had schizophrenia, right? We just know that they had genes that today are associated with schizophrenia. So it was a video talking about that study, and in the comments of that video, which I was reading, or just not selected against, yes, exactly, Shay. And so in the comments of that YouTube video, someone was like, this reminds me of the work of Julian Jaynes, The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. And then they summed up the book just the way that I did to y'all. And it blew my mind. And I bought the book because of that YouTube comment. And I read the book, and it blew my mind. I love this book. I don't know if I agree with everything in this book. So another, bit of context. Psychology and anthropology really are kind of young sciences in a lot of ways compared to something like physics, right? And this was written in the 70s. This was written pre-replication crisis. There's a lot of studies that are talked about in this book and cited in this book as evidence of his claim. I don't know if they've even been attempted to be replicated. So I would love this book to be taken more seriously and for some of the studies in this book to be replicated, so that we know if they still hold up, and also just there's a lot of there's just so much speculation, and also I'm like a spiritual hippie religious person, and Julian Jaynes is probably not, and so the way that I think about consciousness and soul and spirit, it's inherently going to be like a little bit more mystical, and I don't know what that I don't know what anything means, but I really like this guy's framework for thinking about language and consciousness, and I think that this is more truthful than a lot of other theories, but I don't know if it's like the truth, you know? I like that the cover is just black on white. Big font, I know. It's great. It's great. It's great. It's great. So, another little bit of context, another little bit of context is that this guy's work has like a cult following, but it's not very applicable. There's nothing you can do with this knowledge, and so because of that, it's not important. You know, it doesn't, because it's talking about the past. It's talking about how consciousness may have developed. At most, like the biggest possible prescription you can draw from this work, in my opinion, is just that, like, our brains can do everything they can do for a reason. And so when it comes to something like schizophrenia, you know, that's not necessarily a malfunction. There's like an evolutionary basis for the brain functioning in that way, right? That might be like the only prescriptive thing to come from this book. The author is Julian Jaynes. There have been like maybe one or two scholars who've tried to debunk this, but it hasn't really been debunked, in my opinion. In my opinion, it hasn't really been debunked. Yes, exactly, BNB. Most people pick up the book and say, interesting, not this is revolutionary. Yeah. I think that's true. I'm sorry, I keep bonking the mics. Okay. Are we ready to get started? So, today we are going to talk about what consciousness is. What does Julian Jaynes mean when we're talking about consciousness? And I think Julian Jaynes would argue that this is really what we're all talking about when we say consciousness. I don't know if I would agree with that. I feel like we just have multiple different definitions of consciousness going around all the time. And that's the way that we talk about we have multiple different ideas of spaghetti and pizza as well. And like, that's okay. It's okay for a word to mean multiple things. It's okay for a word to mean multiple things. We're not going to get to the bicameral mind part yet today, because the consciousness part is going to take so long, I think. And I even have a little game to play at some point in the stream. I don't even know if we're going to get to it. It depends on how fast we go. Okay? Depends on how fast we go. Hello, little Sharky. I am not still doing point redeems because I'm too focused, okay? I'm too focused. But thank you for asking. Okay. Here we go, chat. So I want to start with an excerpt. And this is how he opens the book, and it's beautiful. This book gets pretty overwhelming at some points, but he starts with just some beautiful prose. This little paragraph, I vibe with it deeply. Oh, what a world of unseen visions and heard silences, this insubstantial country of the mind. What ineffable essences, these touchless rememberings and unshowable reveries, and the privacy of it all, a secret theater of speechless monologue and prevenient counsel, an invisible mansion of all moods, musings, and mysteries, an infinite resort of disappointments and discoveries, a whole kingdom where each of us reigns reclusively alone, questioning what we will, commanding what we can, a hidden hermitage where we may study out of the troubled book of what we have done and yet may do. An introcosm that is more myself than anything I find in a mirror. This consciousness that is myself of selves, that is everything and yet nothing at all. What is it? And where did it come from? And why? Ugh. If I ever got a tattoo, it would be that whole thing just tattooed down my back. That's not true. I don't think that's true. That's a lie. That's just a fantasy that I had. There's a version of me, though. There's probably a version of me. But there's a version of me. A ribs tattoo? That'd be pretty good, too. That'd be pretty good, too. You're right about that one. Yeah. Okay. Anyway. What is consciousness? What is consciousness? What is consciousness? So the first thing that he talks about is that we have to define consciousness by what it is not. What consciousness is not. The general vibe of what consciousness is that he's talking about is like human level, deep thinking that we are aware of. Human level, deep thinking that we are aware of. So ideas that we are aware of having, plans that we are aware of having, when we have a song stuck in our head and we have a relationship to that song, and then we can't think of some of the lyrics, and then we're annoyed because we want to think of some of the lyrics, and we have a relationship to the things we can't remember and the things we can remember. Not self-awareness. Similar to introspection, but not necessarily. So, what is it not? An ongoing... Okay, yes, that's a very good way of saying it, Shay. That Julian Jaynes would approve. It's an ongoing mental landscape. But what is it not? It is not reactivity, and it is not awareness. So, whenever you are asleep, you remain reactive. Whenever you're knocked out, or whenever you have like a medically induced sleep for surgery or something, you lose reactivity. You lose reactivity, and you also lose consciousness. You also lose consciousness. Whenever you are awake, we are sometimes not conscious of things, and sometimes we are not conscious at all, okay? So a good example of this is whenever you are laying down in the grass, you are not conscious of the grass, but if something starts to like pick you in a weird way, some little thing, you might very unconsciously like move or shift your leg, and you're not thinking about that, but you are reacting. So you have reactivity, you have a bodily awareness, you have a knowledge of how to move to be more comfortable, but you are not conscious of it. A lot of hand movements are the same as well. We are often not conscious of what we're doing with our hands, unless we're performing. Right now, I'm very conscious of what I'm doing with my hands in this moment because I'm thinking about it and I'm talking about it and I'm live streaming and everyone's looking at my hands. Oh God, everyone's looking at my hands. But in normal everyday conversation, I am not conscious of what I am doing with my hands. You are probably also not conscious of what you're doing with your hands. And when I just did this, I became aware that I had momentarily lost consciousness, and then of what I was doing with my hands. This I did very naturally, as in unconsciously. And then I realized that I was doing something unconsciously, and I was like, I'm conscious of it. I'm conscious of it now. I'm conscious of it. Whenever I choose what words to say, yes, exactly, Magnum plate. You are now manually blinking. Yes, exactly. There are all kinds of things that we are reactive to and aware of that he would not say requires consciousness. This is not consciousness. It is not awakeness. It is not awareness. It is not awakeness. It is not awareness. It is not reactivity. And sometimes, like you are now manually blinking, similar to that, consciousness is even a problem. Musicians, dancers, athletes, a lot of us know this. Sometimes if you think too hard, if you become conscious, you do perform much worse. You perform much worse, right? Tall glass of milk. Thank you so much for your sub. Thank you. Nothing gets me off rhythm more than thinking about being on rhythm. Exactly, Agan. Exactly. Tall glass of milk says the sense of your body, knowing where your limbs are in relation to your body, is called proprioception. Yes, true. Which we're not conscious of our proprioception usually until we think about it, and then we're conscious of it, right? But yeah, whenever you're doing a dance, like a choreographed dance, we talk about it as we learn muscle memory, right? Whenever you're doing some kind of athletic thing, like aiming a bow and pulling that. Oh, I'm so sorry. There's all kinds of athletic things that if we become conscious of them, they become problems because we need to be reactive, not conscious. This is especially true in things like team sports, like soccer. Like, you just need to react unconsciously, and you need to have learned over time through practices, like what to do whenever you see someone out of your peripheral vision move in a particular way. You react immediately and you don't think about it, right? Yes, martial artist mentality. Yes, we need to get things in our bodies and practice them so that we are not conscious in the moment, right? And consciousness is not just knowing something or remembering something, because there are many things that we know that we are not conscious of. There are many things that we know. There are facts in our heads that we know as stored memories, but we're not conscious of it. And we experience this whenever we go to our favorite restaurant and something's different. And we're like, I don't know what it is. Something's different. I'm not, and I don't know what it is. And then we ask the waiter, like, has something changed? Has something changed? And the waiter says, yeah, we have new chairs. We replaced all the chairs with new chairs. So the old chairs, you knew them, but you were not conscious of them. And now something's changed. And you know something's changed. But because you were not conscious of the old chairs, you can't figure out what it is that you know. What it is that you know. Hello, Wolf in YouTube chat. Hello, I've been watching you for a while from South Korea. Oh, wow, thank you so much. May I request drinking sounds for ASMR? It's my most favorite sound ever. I don't do requests for triggers when I live stream, but thank you so much for the idea, and I will consider incorporating it into a normal ASMR video. Thank you. Yes. So there are many things that we know that we are not conscious of. Things like hair color. Whenever your girlfriend comes in the room and she's like, what's changed? All of a sudden, even if you know something's changed, you realize just how much you were not conscious of, you know? You were not conscious of the exact length of her bangs. You were not conscious of how she did her makeup, right? Even if you know something's changed, you were not conscious of it. You were not conscious of it. You were not conscious of it. It sounds like awareness and consciousness could be interchangeable. No, because awareness is a little bit more like reactivity, right? So there are lots of things that we are aware of that we're not, that we're not necessarily conscious of. Like we're aware of the prickly piece of grass that we shift out of the way of, right? But we're not necessarily conscious of it. Or like, you know, if we start sitting in a different position, we had a sort of body awareness that like made us want to shift, but we're not necessarily conscious of it. So consciousness is also not learning. consciousness is not learning, because we learn things unconsciously, especially socially. This was a section of the book where I was like, okay, all of this stuff, all of these studies, definitely, I have an urge for these things to be like replicated. I don't want that to happen. I'm sorry if this sounds awful. There we go. Okay. Good example, Agan. Good example. Like we pick up ideas basically from our surroundings, from the people around us, and we learn things unconsciously all the time. And a lot of time it's a very conscious process to unlearn things. Thank you again, Wolf. Thank you so much for your dono. Thank you. So I want to talk to you about some of these studies because I think these are really fun and interesting. Click, 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 click. Okay. A simple experiment can demonstrate this, and what he's talking about is proving that learning is not consciousness. Ask someone to sit opposite you and to say words. Ask someone to say words, as many words as he can think of, pausing 2 or 3 seconds after each of them for you to write them down. If after every plural noun you say good or right as you write it down, or simply with a smile, or if you repeat the plural word pleasantly, the frequency of plural nouns will increase significantly. As he goes on saying words, the important thing here is that the subject is not aware that he is learning anything at all. He is not conscious that he's trying to find a way to make you increase your encouraging remarks, or even of his solution to that problem. Every day in all our conversations, we are constantly training and being trained by each other in this manner, and yet we are rarely conscious of it. Positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement, but yes, this little social experiment is a good way. It's a good example of positive reinforcement, and it's also fun to do with your friends. You can test your friends on this. Test your friends. Isolated Matrix, thank you so much for your sub. Thank you. Such unconscious learning is not confined to verbal behavior. This is fun. This is so fun. Okay. Members of a psychology class were asked to compliment any girl at college wearing red. Within a week, the cafeteria was a blaze of red. And none of the girls was aware that they were being influenced. This feels vaguely sexist, but I'm okay with it. I think it's interesting. Another class, a week after being told about unconscious learning and training, tried it on the professor. Every time the professor moved towards the right side of the classroom, they paid rapt attention and roared at his jokes. It is reported that they were almost able to train him right out the door, and he remained unaware of anything unusual. I like this experiment more. This one's fun. I think we should all experiment on our kings and queens. We see this in chat. We see this on Twitch. Chat, you are training me all the time. I try to be conscious of it, but I'm a weak-willed human. And whenever we look at people who are like audience captured and stuff, I don't want to name names, but I think that there are some people who you can tell they have really been trained by chat unconsciously. And it's just really obvious. That's all I'm going to say. It's just really obvious. But yeah, we're unconsciously training each other all the time in ways that we're not conscious of. Yes. Oh, yes. I'm so glad that I remembered this page number, or that I wrote down this page number, because he goes on. The critical problem with most of these studies is that if the subject decided beforehand to look for such contingencies, he would of course be conscious of what he's learning to do. One way to get around this is to use a behavioral response, which is imperceptible to the subject. And this has been done using a very small muscle in the thumb whose movements are imperceptible to us and can only be detected by an electrical recording apparatus. The subjects were told that the experiments were concerned with the effect of intermittent, unpleasant noise combined with music upon muscle tension. 4 electrodes were placed on their bodies, the only real one being the one over the small thumb muscle, and the other 3 being dummies. The apparatus was so arranged that whenever the imperceptible thumb muscle twitch was electrically detected, the unpleasant noise stopped for 15 seconds if it was already sounding, or delayed for 15 seconds if it was not turned on at the time of the twitch. In all subjects, the imperceptible thumb twitch that turned off the distressing noise increased in rate, without the subjects being the slightest bit conscious that they were learning to turn off the unpleasant noise. How interesting is that? So this is a muscle that we don't have the capacity to be conscious of using. It's too small. It's too small. So it's different because, in the example, like the girl's wearing red or the professor moving, it's possible for a girl to be conscious of what she puts on. I would say most girls are usually conscious of what they wear, of what they decide to wear. And it's possible for the professor to be conscious of moving, but this is it's impossible. Whatever muscle is in there, it's impossible for us to really control it. But it does twitch sometimes, and we were able to learn to stop the noise with it, to stop the unpleasant noise. But this is one of these things where, and maybe the study has been replicated, I don't know, but there's so many studies that are cited in this book that I know were kind of before the replication crisis situation, because this book was written in the 70s, and I'd imagine that a lot of these studies were being done like anywhere from the 40s up to the 70s, right? So I would be interested in their replicability. Sinjobe, thank you so much for gifting channel membership. Thank you. So yes, consciousness is not learning. We learn unconsciously. And Julian Jaynes goes on to say that consciousness is not thinking. Consciousness is not thinking, at least not most of it. Most thinking is not done consciously. Thinking about, free associating, making judgments, that happens in a way that we are not conscious of, usually. A good example of this is, I think he uses the example of 2 pencils. So if you ask someone to pick up 2 pencils and feel them in their hands, the subject, the person will have a very conscious experience of saying, this pencil is made of wood and it has these ridges, and this is all things that we're conscious of. It feels kind of nice to roll around in my hand. This pencil is made out of maybe something like metal. Maybe it's a pen. So it's made out of metal and it has one of those little hooks at the top. I'm consciously thinking of it. And then the person giving the experiment says, well, which one is heavier? And you know which one is heavier. You think, and you know which one is heavier. But there's no conscious thing that happens in that moment. You just, you think because you make a judgment and you know which one is heavier. And that's not something that we do consciously. Whenever we look at two paintings, we have a conscious experience of like thinking about the painting, but deciding which one is prettier happens unconsciously. It just happens. We just think one's prettier, and we don't. Yeah, it's instinctive, kind of, but it's not exactly instinctive. But yeah, it's something like that. It's something like that. Song, thank you so much for your prime. Thank you so much for your prime. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Could you possibly scratch the mics? Girl, I wish. Unfortunately, my microphones are broken, and if I scratch them, it will be horribly unpleasant. But trust me, I wish I could. I want to instinctively touch the microphones. That is what my instincts, that is what my body yearns to do. But it's not good. It's not a good situation. It's not a good situation inside of these microphones. So I can't do that. I'm very consciously not touching them. Exactly. BNB. When you can't think of something, when you have a moment of presque-vu, tip of the tongue, when you can't think of something, you're usually highly conscious of the fact that you can't think of something. And usually one does one's thinking before one even knows what to think about. When we think about thinking, we're being conscious. But whenever we're just thinking, it's pretty unconscious. We're just like problem solving in the moment. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Whenever you're problem solving, making a snap judgment, whenever you're free associating, those things come from learned patterns. Very much like what we were talking about with the thumb twitch and the conditioning and stuff. A lot of thinking just happens unconsciously. Now, all of these things that we were talking about, so things like reactivity, awakeness, awareness, knowing, remembering, learning, thinking, all of these things happen in the mind. All of these things happen in the mind, but they are not all consciousness. One more thing consciousness is not, and this is very much like the thinking point, and this is Julian Jaynes getting semantic. One more thing that consciousness is not is reason. Because we reason unconsciously often, and we are consciously surprised by how some solutions come to us. I put another page number here. I can't remember what was so good on this page, but if I write a page number, I feel... Oh wait, I think I do remember. So there's like innumerable examples of this, probably examples in your own life, but a lot of times the best ideas come to us when we are not consciously thinking about them, right? Shower thoughts. We're not conscious oftentimes when we have those light bulb moments. And those are really big, good thoughts. You know, you could learn how to build a civilization with some of those thoughts, but they're very different from having a conscious experience. So yeah, let's see. So yeah, there's a million examples, and he gives some of these examples. There's a guy named Helmholtz that he quotes, who must be important. I don't know who this Helmholtz is. Perhaps an artist, musician, philosopher. And his quote is that Helmholtz had his happy thoughts, which often enough crept quietly into my thinking without my suspecting their importance. In other cases, they arrived suddenly, without any effort on my part. They liked especially to make their appearance while I was taking an easy walk over wooded hills in sunny weather. And Gauss, referring to arithmetical theorem, which he had unsuccessfully tried to prove for years, wrote how, like a sudden flash of lightning, the riddle happened to be solved. I myself cannot say what the conducting thread which connected what I previously knew with what made my success possible. And the brilliant mathematician Poincaré, I have no idea how to pronounce that name. It looks like Poincare, if I was going to say it in my American way. Poincaré, but it has a little, it looks, maybe he's French, I don't know. Poincaré? I don't know. Was particularly interested in the manner in which he came upon his own discoveries. In a celebrated lecture at the Société de Psychologie in Paris, French, I would assume French, he described how he set out on a geologic excursion. The incidents of the journey made me forget my mathematical work. Having reached Coutances, we entered into an omnibus to go to some place or the other. At the moment when I put my foot on the step, the idea came to me, without anything in my former thoughts seeming to have paved the way for it. The transformation I had used to define the Fouchian functions were identical with those of non-Euclidean geometry. So yeah, this is just a point to say, like, some of our best ideas, some of our problem solving, some of our reasoning happens unconsciously. And so Julian Jaynes goes on to say that the creative process and all of these like greater thinking efforts, I know we wouldn't usually think of, in like the current zeitgeist, we don't think of mathematicians as like creatives, but they obviously are. Anyone who's like using their brain to come up with new ideas, they can be an artist or a scientist or a physicist. All of these people are kind of artists. If they're coming up with new ideas, they're using their creative capabilities, right? They're using their creative capabilities. So any people who are engaging with creative thought kind of know that creative thought comes in 3 steps. There is what happens consciously, which is preparation. That's when we kind of like discover something that we need to solve or mull over. And then there's incubation, which is not conscious. We are not conscious of the actual problem solving that's going on in our head. We're not conscious of a lot of reasoning. We can be, but we're oftentimes not conscious of a lot of the reasoning that goes on in our head. And then we have an illumination, which we are then usually conscious of, and then we consciously kind of justify that illumination using logic, using what we know, what we've learned. And that's usually a more conscious process. So, consciousness, it's not being awake, it's not being aware, it's not being reactive, it's not learning, it's not remembering, it's not thinking, it's not reason. And y'all, you ready for this one? It doesn't even happen in your head. It can happen anywhere. You can place your consciousness anywhere. We think of it happening in our head because that feels right. Yes, it's some secret 10th thing. Exactly, set of words. Exactly. Consciousness isn't even happening in our head. The anatomy that enables consciousness, our mind, our brain, that's in our head. Our brain is in our head. But whenever we are consciously riding a bicycle, we are not riding a bicycle inside of our head. Because there's no room for a bicycle inside of our head, right? And another way to think about this is that before the Western, before Europe, I'll say, before the European biological canon knew that the brain had all this stuff, we placed our consciousness in our heart. And this is like a fun fact that's like not even controversial. Almost everyone kind of like agrees with this. It's really thoroughly laid out in like all kinds of old texts. Our sense of self used to be in our heart. We used to experience selfhood in our heart. And over time we realized, and so also for a lot of the European medicinal tradition in like ancient Greece, I feel like it started in ancient Greece, but it probably started before then and maybe went on for a long time. We used to think that the brain was just a cooling agent. We thought that our brains cooled us down. That's all we thought that our brains did, right? We had very bad medical information. And we thought that the heart had was some kind of thing that contained us, me, right? Now, a lot of times we place consciousness in the head. And this is cultural. And this is really, what Julian Jaynes is talking about in this part of the book. Where we place consciousness is cultural. And whenever we talk to someone, we usually look into their eyes, which is it's like a leftover instinct from our ape ancestors, that had to do with territorialism, basically. But we look into each other's eyes and we kind of imagine that we are speaking into some space behind their eyes that contains them. We don't really think about talking to a brain. We're conceptualizing an imagined space within them. We're conceptualizing talking to their consciousness. But we know that there's no space inside of their brain that we're really aiming at, and it might as well be their heart. And depending on what part of the world you live in and what culture you live in, you might still sometimes place a lot of selfhood in the heart. I know I do. Sometimes it's almost like a code switching thing. In the Christian tradition, we talk about the Sacred Heart of Jesus all the time. We talk about everyone's hearts bleeding. So there's still kind of remnants of vibes thinking about the self being in the heart and in the chest. And sometimes I feel like I slide into that idea. Reminded of Jacob Geller's great head transplant video. I know, I'm also reminded of that. Fantastic video. But we do know that consciousness and awareness and thoughts and sensory processes comes from the brain. Yes, we know that the anatomy that enables consciousness comes from the brain. But consciousness itself is not inside the brain. And another good example of this is whenever sometimes people get brain damage, or sometimes people have drug-induced experiences, and this happens medically, and this also happens with recreational drugs, or with some traditional indigenous ritual substances, where you can induce an experience where your consciousness moves somewhere else, where all of a sudden you're in the corner of the room watching yourself, and you're you might be seeing things kind of inaccurately or weirdly, but your experience of self is in the corner of the room and you're looking at your body. So, astral projecting, yeah, something like that. Except Julian Jaynes isn't saying that there's anything necessarily mystical happening here. He's just saying that sometimes our consciousness is somewhere else. Sometimes our consciousness is somewhere else, somewhere else, somewhere else, somewhere else, somewhere else, somewhere else. Where would you say your consciousness is placed most of the time? Definitely in my head most of the time, but every now and then in my heart. Every now and then in my heart, my heart, my heart, my heart, my heart, my heart, my heart. Let's see. So, We don't need consciousness to learn, to think, to judge, to execute ideas, to build social relationships, and it happens somewhere completely imaginary. So, could there be a society of unconscious people? Julian Jaynes would say yes. Julian Jaynes would say that it actually works quite well. Not necessarily better or worse than a society of conscious people. Conscious people. It's just a different way to build society if you have a society of unconscious people. Because without consciousness, the way that we experience it, we can think, reason, judge, we can be aware, we can be reactive, we can learn, we can execute ideas, we can follow instructions, we can communicate. We still are humans, and we are still very different from chimpanzees. We still have a lot of humanity to us, even without consciousness. So now we have to talk about what consciousness is. We have to talk about what consciousness is. And now, before we talk about what consciousness is, we have to talk about metaphors. 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 Oh my gosh, Shader, I know what you're talking about. Did you know we almost have like a brain in our spine? The upper part of our spinal nerve system is very complex. It's not just a thick cable. Yeah, our nervous system holds a lot of intelligence. I feel like I remember some crazy study talking about that at some point. I can't remember the details, so I'm like not even gonna try. But it had something to do with like people like losing part of their brain, but their body still like could do some crazy stuff because so much intelligence was held in the nervous system throughout the body. But yeah, I can't remember the details. But yeah, so we have to talk about metaphors. And this is crazy. This is so fun. If you have the same kind of brain as me, this part of the book starts getting into like linguistics, and it just gets really fun. So Julian Jaynes comes up with 4 new words to unpack metaphors. So we all know what a metaphor is. It's a comparison. It's a comparison usually without using the words like or as, which in a literary sense, if it uses like or as, we would be calling it a simile. A simile. But if we don't use the word like or as, then it's a metaphor. A metaphor. A metaphor. Julian Jaynes talks about how all language is built upon metaphors. All language is built upon metaphors, and etymology, he doesn't say this, but he talks about this, so I'm saying it. Etymology is really just the study of how metaphors have evolved and changed over time. So the 4 words that he comes up with: metaphire, metaphrand, paraphiers, paraphrans. We're going to talk about it. All y'all are my para friends. That's not a word that he said. I just came up with that one just now, though. Okay. So, let's take a metaphor. Chat, come up with a metaphor for me. Give me a metaphor. Give me a metaphor, chat. Any metaphor will do. Any metaphor? Toad face. This country is a butt. I actually like that one better. Let's do that. This country is a butt. This country is a butt. So that one's nice because it's not an implied metaphor. We have the root thing, country, and butt. So butt here is the metaphire, and country is the metaphrand. And we're going to master metaphires and metaphrans before we get to the para stuff, okay? So the metaphire is the thing that we know. And so we're indicating to the thing that we know because it's right in front of us. We know it better. And then there's the metaphrand, which is the root thing, which we usually know a little less, or it's far away. And so we have to compare it to something. And he derives these words from the idea of a multiplier and a multiplicand. So that's like where the words are coming from. So the metaphor is the thing like doing the work, is another way to think of it. The metaphor is doing the work of making something more understandable. And the metaphrand is like what we're actually talking about. What we're actually talking about. What we're actually talking about. Yes. Set of words, got the spelling right. There we go, there we go, there we go, there we go, there we go. So the metaphor is the more known thing, the metaphrand is the more unknown thing. When the metaphrand is actually an unknown thing, the metaphor often becomes a label. Before we get to that, let's just do more examples. Let's do the toad face one. Let's do the toad face one. And maybe instead of saying toad faced, I'll say like, I went on a date with a guy and he was a toad. He was a toad. So toad is the metaphor. Whatever you're thinking about, that meaning, is the metaphrand. It's the metaphrand, okay? It's the metaphrand. The metaphrand. The metaphrand. And whatever I'm thinking about as well is the metaphrand. My mic gain is a little bit too high. Thank you, Song. I'm gonna turn these mics a little bit lower. How's that? How's that? How's that? How's that? Especially if I speak a little bit more loudly. Like if I do a little bit. How's that? Might have lowered it too much. How's that? How's that? How's that? How's that? How's that? How's that? Testing, 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 testing. Good, good. Okay, excellent. So, the metaphor and the metaphrand. And yes, then whenever the thing is actually unknown. Okay, so yeah, I went on a date with a guy and he was a toad. Conversation goes on. I'm a streamer. Conversation goes on. Okay, I'm talking about my date, and then I'm talking about going on a different date, and then I'm referring back to this guy, and I'm going to call him Toad Guy. Do you see what just happens? Now we've developed a vernacular. Now we've developed a language. The metaphor of this guy was a toad. Now that's become his actual label. Now he's Toad Guy. Now we have language. Now we have a new word. Yeah? Now we have a new word. And that happens all the time. This is how all language, Julian Jaynes says, has its origin. Has its origin. So, and we can see this in a lot of language. We talk about, there's things like stag beetles and buttercups, pineapples, cat dog, if you will. Whenever things are a new thing, we kind of just make metaphors out of them. And then those become the actual label. Those become the actual label. Honeydew. Yes, exactly. Exactly, exactly. Probably the most used metaphors, metaphors have to do with the human body. And it's because the human body is the thing that as humans we are more familiar with than anything else. So we talk about the head of a crew, the head of an army, the head board, the face of a mountain. We talk about the arms of chairs and the legs of tables, and we talk about the lips of pitchers, and we talk about the iron hand, the foot of the bed. Yes, we talk about the eye of a needle. Yes, exactly. We use body metaphors all the time. We talk about the fingers of we talk about ladies' fingers, ladies' fingers, ladies' fingers, ladies' fingers, ladies' fingers. We talk about the teeth of combs. We talk about we talk about the teeth of other things. What do we talk about the teeth of? The skin. The skin of your teeth is a crazy one. Yeah, that one's got multiple levels in it. Multiple levels. Multiple levels. Yes, the teeth of cogs. Yes. And then there's other. Julian Jaynes takes the idea of a metaphor and he takes it far and away from its like literary context. So some of the things that, like a literary metaphor, you know, we're talking about something that looks very much like a metaphor. But when Julian Jaynes is talking about metaphor, he's talking about it as a building block of language. So calling things like the mitochondria the powerhouse of a cell. We use metaphors to talk about our bodies, to talk about physics and science all the time. We talk about energy waves, right? Even that is a metaphor. We're comparing the kind of foreign, intangible thing of energy to ocean waves, which we have seen for hundreds of thousands, millions of years, right? Millions of years, the capital being the heart of the city. Yes, windows to the soul. Yes. But yeah, we talk about energy fields. Energy fields is another one. This is physics. This is scientific language. So we're not just talking about pretty poetry. Scientific language is built on metaphors. Energy fields. We talk about the immune system attacking cells as if it's an army. As if it's an army of men. As if it's an army of 16-year-old men that have been drafted in 1739. You know, but the immune system, it's a metaphor because the immune system isn't really attacking with swords and stuff like that. So yes, all of these are metaphors. We talk about electrons latching on to protons or atoms. All of these things started as metaphors and then they turned into labels. And that is how language grows. That's how language grows. And that's how we start to perceive new things. That's how we start to conceptualize stuff inside of our head. Inside of our head. This is another metaphor. Because whenever we talk about things happening inside of our mind, we are taking our conscious experience and we're spatializing it. And that is another really important aspect of what consciousness is. It's spatialization. And we have even more to talk about metaphors. So this is just a prelude talking about spatialization, but I think it's so fun to start hurting yourself with thinking about thinking. So I'm just going to give you all this awful gift right now to think about how much you spatialize your thinking when there's no extra space in there. And we talk about finding common ground between two different people. We talk about ideas being brilliant. We talk about seeing what I mean, seeing what you mean. I see what you mean, but we don't literally see it. We don't see anything whenever we see what someone means. What we're doing is conceptualizing space, and we're conceptualizing like a world where some things are dark and some things are bright, and our minds sometimes feel fuzzy, and sometimes they feel foggy, and sometimes they feel clear. And yeah, this is an important concept in understanding consciousness. But we need to talk more about metaphors. And for this, we are going to play a game. But before we play the game, I have to explain metafires and metaphrans. Okay, I have to explain metafires and metaphrans. So, toad face. Let's talk about this man that I went on a date with, this toad face. I know that there's always new people coming into chat, so I also just want to say this is a made-up story. None of this is true. None of this is true. This is an example metaphor that we're using. Toad face. I went on a date, and this guy was a toad. This guy had a toad face. This is a metaphor. So the metaphrand is that this guy had something wrong with his face. The metaphire is toad. The metaphire is toad. Now, the parafire are things that we associate with toads. Slimy, bumpy, amphibious, carry diseases. That's all I got. Now, the paraphrand would be the details of what makes this guy's face look weird. It would be like, you know, the paraphrans would be the oily skin and the... I don't want to just insult anyone's appearance right now. You'll have to imagine the paraphrans. Maybe I should have come up with a better example. This poor hypothetical guy. Yeah, creepy wide smile. That's a good example. That's a good example. His tongue too long. Too long of a tongue on this man. Warts. Yes. So this, yeah, that's the paraphrand. The paraphrand. So the parafires and the paraphrans are like even more kind of architecture and scaffolding that come out of these metaphors that we use. Metaphors. And now we're gonna play a game. 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 We're gonna play a game, and I hope this works, of metaphor deconstruction. Okay. Are y'all ready? Are y'all ready? Are y'all ready? No! Okay, wait, let me fix this. The clouds weave shade over the village. Okay, chat. The metaphire is weave. Weave. The metaphire is weave. Let's put this down here. The metaphire is weave. What are the parafires? Can y'all try and decode what are the parafires? So the parafires, I'll help y'all with this one because it's the first one. The parafires are things that we associate with weaving. The parafires are things that we associate with weaving, and they're going to color the feeling of this sentence. The clouds weave shade over the village. Strands, that's a good one. Thread, that's also very good. Ferome and Hoxella, casting, enveloping, yes. I think that the weaving also implies organization, right? Organization. And weave also said it implies a sort of carefulness, and like a feminine care. We think of old ladies weaving. It's almost like the clouds are doing this for our protection, out of kindness for us, right? And those are the parafires. Carefulness, organization, intention, motherly care, all of those are like embedded in the idea of weaving. Weaving. And the metaphrand is how the clouds look. You know, they're looking like that. Whatever that is, that's the metaphrand. And we're all looking at it together in the imagined world of where this sentence is spoken. How the clouds look is the metaphrand, and it is unstated. It's unstated, right? Because we're using a metaphor to describe it. So it's how the clouds look. And the paraphrand is, like, we're not getting sunburned, and that's nice. So we're kind of grateful. We're kind of grateful for how these clouds look. We're kind of grateful for how these clouds feel. And that's like all of the subtext, right? Paraphrans. The clouds are weaving shade over the village, weaving shade over the village, weaving shade over the village. It's a nice sentence. Now, this next one, I'm going to give y'all a little bit less help, The oak leaves whisper on the moonlit trail. The oak leaves whisper on the moonlit trail. So, what is the metaphor, chat? What is the metaphor? The metaphor is the easiest thing to identify because it's what's in the sentence. Yes, Jerome. Whisper. 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 Whisper is the metaphor. And what are the paraphors? So paraphors are what we associate with whispering. What do we associate with whispering, chat? Quiet is a good one. Quiet, yes. Subduedness, subtlety, yes. Soft sounds, that's another metaphor. It's still allowed. Because everything's a metaphor. Everything is a metaphor. But good to note, soft sounds, that's a metaphor. But closeness, secrets, that's a good one, Maverick, yes. Delicacy. Intimacy, yes. I was also thinking a little bit of paranoia. Conspiracy, yes, y'all got it. Whisper Hill, isolated matrix. Secrets, quiet, on the moonlit trail, it's probably at night, and it's like, what are the leaves whispering about? I don't speak leaf. So there's a little bit of paranoia, I would say, as well. A little bit of paranoia. Now, what is the metaphrand? What is the metaphrand here? Which is not clearly stated in the sentence, but it's what we're talking about. When we say the oak leaves whisper, what are the oak leaves doing? That's the metaphrand. The rustling, yes. Leaves brushing together in the wind. Yes, it's just probably, I don't know how well y'all can hear this. But yes. And then what are the what's the metaphor or metaphors? What's the metaphor or metaphors? If we talk about the leaves whispering, so now we're going to talk about, so the metaphor here is how we feel about the leaves rustling. Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you, set of words. Paraphrand. What is the paraphrand? Paraphrand. So the sound itself is the metaphrand. And the paraphrand is going to be like, why did we choose the word whisper? Yeah, the paraphrand is that we're on guard. That's a good way to say it, Mordrin. This is where I learned secrets. That could be another one. Yeah, absolutely. I said feeling alone, feeling paranoid, feeling like the woods are kind of like a separate thing that has intentions, like the oak leaves are whispering. It's like, oh, I feel like maybe I'm alone, but I'm not alone. So we're talking about the oak leaves whispering. Those are paraphrans. birds, gossipy birches, exactly. Gossipy oaks, supposedly. Philosophical chat. I know, this is so fun. Y'all, I'm having so much fun. I'm so glad that y'all are here for this. I'm so glad that y'all are as here for this as I am. So it isn't about the leaves, but about the lone person. Yeah, right. So the oak leaves whisper on the moonlit trail. The metaphor is always going to be in the sentence that we're looking at, right? The paraphiers are always going to be things that we associate directly with this word, because this is our reference word. And the metaphrand is always going to be something abstract that we're indicating, and the paraphrans is going to be like the feelings associated with this abstract thing that made us choose this word, you know? That made us choose this word. Choose this word. Okay. He built a prison out of envy. He built a prison out of envy. Envy. Now, there's actually two metaphors in this, but there's one that's easier to talk about, so we're going to talk about that one. Prison. Prison is the easier one, yes. So we're going to talk about prison. Technically, saying built right here is also a metaphor. I don't think I talked about that when I was making these slides, though. We're going to talk about prison. Prison. He built a prison out of envy. So that's our metaphor. 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 Ever thought of becoming a teacher? I think I am. I think that's what I'm doing. I think this is the way that I do that. Maybe one day I'll do it in a different way. But, you know, I am exactly what you said, which is a lowercase t. I feel like I'm doing a lowercase t teaching, and I'm happy with that right now. I'm very happy with that. It's kind of like sometimes on my YouTube shorts where I've posted some original songs on YouTube, and consistently a lot of the comments in that are "you should make music," which I'm always like, I don't know what to tell you. But thank you though. Because it's encouraging. It is very nice. It is very nice. And I know those comments are being supportive. And I think that they're usually saying that I should put my stuff on Spotify. And it's kind of like packing up the road mics for customer support. It's just hard for me to feel like it. It's hard for me to feel like it sometimes. I have also built a prison, not out of envy, more out of something else. Something I have not effed yet. And by that, I mean it's ineffable. And I would eff it if I tried right now. So instead, let's talk about building a prison out of envy. Building a prison out of envy. The metaphor is prison. 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 Where can I learn more about this topic? This is our reference book. Today. Julian Jaynes, The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. So what are the metaphrans? So let's review. Metaphrans are things that we associate with the word prison. Prison. What do we associate with the word prison? Prison. Enclosure. Trapped. Helplessness. I also think of gray and like plainness and kind of simplicity, like a very it's like dry and there's no enjoyment, there's no color and celebration and life. All of these are my metaphrans. Stillness, boredom, claustrophobic, a little bit, could be. Lack of comfort, cages, white collar crime. That one's funny, isolated. That one's funny. Yes. So all of these are our Parafires. Oh yes, guilt. Guilt is one as well. Like this, if you're in prison, you've committed a crime, probably. We hope. We hope. But yeah, you are imprisoned. You are imprisoned. You are despairing. You are despairing. You are despairing. Guilt ain't a given, but it is, yeah, it is something that we associate with prison, I think. The feeling of judgment, yes. It is a feeling of judgment. So what is the metaphrand? Metaphrand in this sentence? What is the metaphrand in this sentence? This one's a little bit more abstract. It's kind of hard. It's not as concrete as, you know, the rustling of the leaves. And we don't have a lot of context here, so there's a lot of things that it could be, but I think that we can pin it down to something. The isolation that envy brings. He built a prison out of envy. I think walls is a little bit closer, although that's also a metaphor. So disengagement, that's pretty good as well. Obsession, possible. The way that I worded it is closer to what you're saying, Arcs, which is restriction. He made himself unable to progress in something, unable to move, he made himself like closed off to change. He making a mental wall, stopping progress. Exactly, Mordred, exactly. He's caged himself in from doing some kind of progression that is implied to be good for him, because prison is probably not good for him. And he built this prison himself, so it's probably not good for him, right? So the metaphrand is like he made himself unable to progress, stagnant, right? Which is all of these things are metaphors on metaphors, because in a literal sense, we know that I'm not talking about this man being unable to move. We mean it metaphorically. He's unable, but it's hard to put words to it. And the metaphors, or sorry, I keep saying that, the paraphrans, there's the metaphrand. He made himself unable to progress. And the paraphrand is his helplessness, his lack of freedom, his dissatisfaction, because we're talking about envy, right? So he's dissatisfied with something, and these are the things that he's like building a prison out of. These are the things. And these are the paraphrands. These are the things that we associate with the metaphrand. Using that same example, how would you word that sentence in a literal way without any metaphors? He made himself unable to progress out of envy. That's how you would use it without any metaphor. Click, 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 click. Click, 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 click. I think it makes us realize that our language and world are full of metaphor. Yes, it does. I mean, even that sentence, our language and world are full of metaphor. The word full there is kind of a metaphor, because full implies something very material, and we're obviously talking about something subjective and immaterial in that sentence. But we talk about fullness when we talk about like a cup overflowing, a box that can't have anything more in it, right? All of these things are metaphors. No word exists in a vacuum. Exactly. Vacuums are pretty new. So this is also a metaphor. All of these things are metaphors. Even what you just said, the set of words, changing minds. When we talk about changing minds, that's also a metaphor. Everything is a metaphor. Everything is a metaphor. And I think, did I write down the page? Did I write down the page? It might be page 51. I hope it's page 51. He's making this point of talking about everything, yes, being a metaphor. And he says, it is not always obvious that metaphor has played this all-important function, but this is because the concrete metaphors become hidden in a phonemic language, leaving the words to exist on their own. Even such an unmetaphorical sounding word as the verb to be was generated from a metaphor. It comes from the Sanskrit bu, which means to grow or to make grow, while the English forms am and is have evolved from the same root as the Sanskrit asmi, to breathe, to breathe, to breathe. It is something of a lovely surprise that the irregular conjugation of our most nondescript verb is thus a record of a time when man had no independent word for existence and could only say that something grows or that it breathes. Of course, we are not conscious that the concept of being is thus generated from a metaphor about growing and breathing. Abstract words are ancient coins whose concrete images, in the busy give and take of talk, have worn away with use. Isn't that beautiful? This is surprisingly, readable for being so dreadfully titled and covered. It's not a dry text. It does get dry, I will confess. But we don't need to get to that. We're not at the dry part yet. We're at the exciting introduction part. It's not actually the introduction. It's chapters 1 and 2 are what we're talking about today. Dry text, it's a metaphor. Yes, yes. Whenever you get into thinking about this, thinking about metaphors this much, it is a little bit overwhelming how activated you become thinking about metaphors in every sentence, all over the place, all over the place, all over the place, all over the place. Lord, I'm going to be hyper-analyzing metaphors in everyday language now. I know, BNB. I know. I think it's very readable so far, but it's also the kind of text that makes you stop and think about every sentence. Yes, that's for sure, for sure. So, I think we have some more fun exercises. Let's just do some more. Let's just really lock in, okay? A blanket of rose petals covered the initiate, covered the initiate, covered the initiate. Blanket, good job everyone. That's the metaphor. Blanket. Oh, this one we're typing together. Let me fix this. We're in the typing together phase. We're teamwork in this chat. Here we go. Blanket. Okay. What are some parifiers? What's an initiate? In my head, I was thinking someone's getting initiated into a cult, and so they're bowing down and someone's blanketing them in rose petals. That's the story in my head. So that's where this sentence comes from. A blanket of rose petals covered the initiate. So the parifiers, what do we associate with blanket? I think comfort. I think safety. I think envelop. Yeah. I think peace. I think sleep. They're not necessarily sleeping, but I think of a sort of state of mind. Safe. Yeah, I think safe. Which probably says something about the perspective of this initiate, right? And then what is the metaphrand? The metaphrand would be the rose petals are all over the initiate. Initiate. And the paraphrands, the rose petals are all over the initiate, and they look they look peaceful. They look rested. They look peaceful, rested. They look like they chose this. It's not being done like against their will. So they look they look welcomed. It's like hospitable. A little bit heavenly. I feel like heaven. Yeah, that would work. There's a certain bridalness of it. Yeah. All of these things rewarded. Yeah. Those are things that are making us choose the word blanket as our metaphor. Okay. Let's go on. Order in the court. This is a metaphor. Order in the court. Because order used to just mean like putting things in consecutive order, right? And now we've kind of used it, now we kind of use it as a way to say like organization or something, which is different. So metaphor, order. Metaphrand is something like sit down, sit like, sit down. get back in your spot. Organization. Sit down in your spot. Stop yelling. Right? Calmness. Yep. Calmness. Yep. Order. What do we associate with order? What do we associate with order? Lines, numbers, consecutive, organization again, organization, propriety, authority. Yes to all of these. Rules. Yes. Order, rules, order, and rules. And then the metaphrand, organization. We want organization in the court. We want everyone sitting down. I'll just say sitting down. Maybe I should say quiet. We want quiet in the court. We want calm in the court. We want calm. We want calm. We want calm in the court. What are the paraphrands? What are the paraphrands? Up to proper standards. Your attention. Strictness. Yeah. Strictness. Composure. Yes. Unity, that's good. Yep, unity, control, all of these things. Discipline, obedience. Yes. Now, not all metaphors have a long list of paraphors and paraphrands. But the best metaphors, like the most extended, poetic, complicated, beautiful metaphors, have long lists of paraphors and paraphrands. Here we go. When she kissed me, I ascended. Metaphor, ascended. What do we associate with ascension? heaven, purity, elation, goodness, wings, sacred, rapture, divine, yes. Metafriend, good kiss. Yeah, good kiss. Good kiss. Good kiss. Paraphrans. Good kiss stuff. Mechanics. Happiness. Yeah, happiness. Happiness, yes. Really, really good feelings. Butterflies in the tummy, which is another metaphor, but that's okay. Desires being fulfilled. Yes. Long tongue from the toad guy. Not the toad guy. Anyone but the toad guy. Love. Yes, love. All these things. Closed eyes. Yeah. All of these things might make us choose the word ascended, like an out-of-body experience. Kind of like I've been released from my human form. Yes. Ooh, this one I put in too. His wield of words wounded Wanda. His wield of words wounded Wanda. There's two. There's two metaphors now here. Wield and wound, yes. Wield and wound. Good job, Hulkzilla. Good job. And sugar spikes. Good job, good job, good job, good job. Good job, good job. So, let's do one at a time. The metaphor of wield has the paraphiers. What are things that we associate with wield? Practice, aim, purpose, control. Yeah. The metaphrand with his wield is that he's good with words. He's good with words. 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 Yeah, medieval, a little bit. Medieval. What are the paraphrands? Why are we choosing the word wield? He's like precise with his words. He's good with his words. He uses intricate language. He has the intent to hurt her. It almost seems like he's done this before. Wit, yeah. Emotional damage. Yeah, all of these things. All of these things. Incisive. Oh, that's a good one. The text is getting smaller and smaller. Let's see if I can. There we go. What did I do? There we go. Alright, now let's go on to the other metaphor. The other metaphor. Wound. Paraphiers. Bleed. Hurt. Ouch. Paraphiers. 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 Injury. Pain. That's a good one. Pain. Death. Yeah. Or like maybe mortality. And the metaphrand is like hurt feelings. Hurt feelings. Hurt feelings. Hurt feelings. Hurt feelings. Hurt feelings. which is also a metaphor. You're right, Jerome. You're right. You're right. What are the paraphrans here? What are the paraphrans to the hurt feelings? I don't know if there's that many paraphrans here. I think that might be mostly it. She's particularly sensitive. Yeah, there's something to that. Like she had, like, it's kind of like a salt in the wounds thing. Like there's a specificity to it. Maybe sensitivity, I'll say. Sensitivity. 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 Okay, let's do one more. One more. Oh yeah, I got a pocket full of sunshine. The metaphrand here, and this happens oftentimes in songs, so the metaphrand does come right after. I gotta love it, I know that he's all mine. The paraphrase being whoa, ooh, whoa, whoa. Of course, of course. So the metaphor is the pocket, and we'll just do this one in a compound way. Pocket full of sunshine. Metaphrand, I gotta love it, I know he does. So the paraphiers are like, you have a beautiful little thing. The sunshine is beautiful. And it's little because it's beautiful, and it's private because it's in your pocket. So it's like, I know that he's all mine. It's like, he's like a possession over a beautiful little thing. Something that makes you feel free and light. Happiness, freedom. It's a very good combination of like freedom and also mine. It's mine. Treasure. That's a good way to say it. Cereal. Treasure, treasure, treasure. Treasure, treasure, treasure. Treasure, treasure. Treasure, treasure. Treasure, treasure. Warmth and light, yes. Warmth, light. There we go. Anyway, I think that is, that's a pretty good, that's a fun exercise to make sure that we all know what a metaphor is made out of. A metaphor and a metaphrand always, and then often paraphiers and paraphrans. Paraphiers and paraphrans. Paraphiers and paraphrans. What's the paraphrand for that sentence? Whoa, ooh, whoa, whoa, ooh, whoa, whoa. That's what the paraphrand is. Hulkzilla. It's a song. I feel like maybe you don't know the song, but it's I got a pocket full of sunshine. I got a love and I know that he's all mine. Whoa, ooh, whoa. Do what you want, but you ain't gonna write me. 6 stones are never gonna shake me, yo. Ooh, whoa. Take me away, a secret space, a sweet escape. Take me away. That one. Anyway. Sorry for the bonk. So, now that we understand what a metaphor is, we can remember all of those things that consciousness is not, right? We have a long list in our head of things that consciousness is not. Learning, thinking, awareness, awakeness, judging, reasoning. It's not our brain. The reason that all these things are not consciousness is kind of because they're ineffective metaphors. These are all like attempts at metaphors. When we say that consciousness is thinking, it's like an attempt at a metaphor, but it's not quite right. It's not quite right. So what Julian Jaynes says consciousness is it's an analog of everything that we are conscious of. Consciousness is an analog of everything that we're conscious of inside of a created mind space. Inside of a created mind space. So what is an analog? What is an analog? An analog is a type of model where every single point is generated by what it is analogous to. So probably the best example of an analog is like a normal map, like a road map, Google Maps. That's an analog. Every single point is generated based off of what the real world looks like. Whenever we talk, so yes, the subjective conscious mind is an analog of what we call the real world. Of what we call the real world. And when we talk about conscious processes, we talk about seeing things clearly and approaching solutions. And all of these are metaphors because we have to use the analog of the real world, which has space that we walk around in. We take space and we walk around it inside of our heads. And that's what consciousness is. We talk about seeing things clearly. We talk about understanding things, which is a metaphor. Because, what are we standing under? We talk about our minds being fuzzy and our minds being clear. We talk about certain minds being brilliant, obscure ideas. And these metaphors that we use to talk about thinking have generated consciousness. So the language came before the consciousness. The language came before the consciousness. And this is like a really big central point. We had the sensation of thinking, reasoning, knowing, remembering, judging. And we kept using metaphors to describe it. And the best metaphors we could come up with were metaphors about our bodies, seeing things clearly, finding common ground. Etc., etc. We kept coming up with these metaphors to talk, to communicate about thinking. And the metaphor built this conscious mind space, this imagined analog of the real world that exists inside of our head, So consciousness is the analog of what we call the real world. It's the analog that we walk around inside of our head. And this is another fun thing that he talks about. When a map maker, a cartographer, if you will, when a map maker makes a map, the map maker has been to the mountain and knows the mountain in his head. So for the map maker, they are taking what they actually know, the metaphrand, and they are using metaphors to draw it out. They are saying, I've been to Mount Vesuvius. I'm going to use the metaphor of this dot to symbolize, to reference Mount Vesuvius. And then, this is going to be, what's another city? What's a city in Greece? Athens. Athens is over here somewhere. Mount Vesuvius, Pompeii, and then over here is Athens. Yeah. And they've actually been there. Whenever people are using a map, let's say you're a Roman, or heck, let's say you're an American watching Twitch, or somewhere else. Let's say you're anywhere in the world watching Twitch right now. And if you were to pick up that map, you would not know where the real world stuff is, because you haven't been there. Maybe you have, but let's pretend you haven't been there. So for you, the map is the metaphrand, right? And the metaphor is the thing that is foreign to you. So there's an opposite relationship there. For the cartographer, the real thing is the metaphrand. For the user, the map is the metaphrand. The map is the metaphrand, okay? And consciousness is the same. So all of our verbal expressions, the way that we communicate, are generating consciousness through metaphor. We are generating consciousness accidentally through layers and layers and layers of metaphor, and through paraphiers and paraphrans, and this whole structure of language and words connecting to one another that very intricately inside of our mind space. Inside of our mind space. So we are creating consciousness. But whenever we just have a conscious experience, we're usually not creating consciousness. We're usually just walking around that map, kind of, metaphorically. We're usually just using the map, the mind map, the analog of the real world. We're using the analog of the real world in order to better understand the outer world, the real world, what we might call the real world. We are using that analog in order to navigate, in order to steer this ship, in order to think through things, in order to find common ground. This feels like a good time to go on a break to me. I have just a little bit more to go. Dead reality theory. Terrifying sentence set of words. But yeah, a little bit like that. We have just a little bit more to go. I'm going to take a quick little break and then come back. I'm having so much fun, my friends. I'm really, really glad that y'all seem to be into this too. Isn't this exciting? Isn't this exciting? I want all of y'all. So, okay, when I come back, we're going to talk about the structure of consciousness, which shouldn't take very long, I don't think. And I also want you all to think about like your favorite ideas that you've like learned this stream, because like I can't help but like want to debrief and like talk to y'all about it after. Like I don't know, just think about reflections, because I'm going to ask for your reflections after we talk about the structure of consciousness. And I will be right back shortly. Hello, hello, hello. All right, the structure of consciousness. Hoxella, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your bits. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. I really appreciate it. I very much appreciate. Okay, we are talking about the structure of consciousness now. So, Julian Jaynes has to come up with words to talk about specific functions and functions within this kind of structure of consciousness. So this isn't so much of an argument as it is him like setting forth vocabulary that is going to be important later on, which we've already done quite a bit with metaphor, metafire, metafrand, parafire, parafrand, parabrand. Thank you for gifting a sub legend. So the first part of the structure of consciousness is spatialization, which we've already talked about quite a bit. We are always thinking in space. We're always kind of thinking about stuff. Even whenever we think about time, when we think about, if I were to ask you, chat, to think about the past 100 years, you can't really think of time. You have to think about time as space. You have to think about a sort of timeline as a line, as things moving from one thing into another in space. And this is a function of consciousness. Consciousness. We think between things, around things, among things. Another aspect of the structure of consciousness is what Julian Jaynes calls excerption. Excerption, as in the word excerpt, like an excerpt. Like I started this stream by reading a little excerpt about consciousness, right? Exactly, set of words. And what he means by that is that if I were to tell you, chat, to think of the movie theater, you immediately make a series of excerpts. You think of probably smells. You think of the line. You think of popcorn. You think of the very big screen in front of you. You have a series of excerptions, and whenever you have a series of excerptions, that's what reminiscing is. To reminisce is to enjoy a sort of series of excerptions, because whenever you think about the movie theater, you really can't think of the whole thing at once. You have to think in a series of excerpts. We think of little signposts of things, and this has a really big influence on our perception of the world, and we don't have a huge amount of control over what excerptions come to mind. For example, I bet my sister and I, if we both think of my mother, we would probably think of random different excerpts, and that will probably have a really big effect on the feeling that we feel. We might have slightly different overriding feelings when we think of that, even though we're both thinking of the same person and we're both very, very familiar with that same person. Or if I were to say school, me and everyone in chat, we are having a series of excerptions about school, and for some of us, the particular reminiscing thing that's happening right now, it's going to make us think, oh wow, school is such a sweet time, or it's going to make us think, oh thank God I've graduated, or man, I was bullied. We're gonna, the type of excerptions that instinctively kind of come to us have a really big effect on how we feel about the world, how we feel about the world, how we feel. If I ask you about the Eiffel Tower, what excerpts do you get from it? I'm gonna get, I mean, I think about what it looks like, and I also think about a video that I watched like yesterday that was definitely scripted by AI, and so I had to click off of it. But that video talked about a little shitty a little shitty Eiffel Tower that someone built somewhere. But the video was written by AI, and I was like, oh, this is a stupid video. And so then I clicked off of it. And that's the excerpt that comes first. And then the second excerpt that comes is like, oh, a lot of people take selfies there. A lot of people take selfies. A lot of people take selfies at the Eiffel Tower. Yeah, and then I also think of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I think it's just because it's another tower. It's just another tower. Yep. Okay, let's turn to page 62. Ah, yes, the analog eye. So the analog eye, I want to read this part exactly, purely because it's quite important, and I'm afraid that I'm going to botch it if I don't read it exactly. So another part of the structure of consciousness is the analog eye. So as we've talked about, consciousness is an analog of what we call the real world. And within consciousness is the analog eye. And separate from that is the metaphor me. Those are both inside of our head. So the analog eye, the most important feature of this metaphor world is the metaphor we have of ourselves, the analog eye, which can move about vicariously in our imagination, doing things that we are not actually doing. There are, of course, many uses for such an analog eye. We imagine ourselves doing this or that, and we make decisions on the basis of imagined outcomes that would be impossible if we did not have an imagined self behaving in an imagined world. If we are out walking and two roads diverge in a wood and we know that one of them comes back to our destination after a much more circuitous route, we can traverse that longer route with our analog eye to see its vistas and to see if its vistas and ponds are worth the longer time it will take. Without consciousness, with its vicarial analog eye, we could not do this. So the analog eye is the thing that we use to imagine ourselves doing things, which is pretty simple. The metaphor me is a little bit more complicated. As we imagine ourselves strolling down the longer path, we catch glimpses of ourselves. And whenever we catch glimpses of ourselves, we call that autoscopic images. We can both look out from the imagined self at the imagined vistas, that's the analog eye, or we can step back again and see ourselves kneeling down for a drink of water at a particular brook. These are, of course, quite profound problems, particularly in the relationship of the I to the me, but that is another treatise, and I am only indicating the nature of the problem. This is so funny to me, because, like, the mind-body problem is already a problem, and Julian Jaynes is going another level and being like, no, but even inside of your mind you have another body that you're imagining. And that's the metaphor. That's the metaphor me. So there's the analog I, which is when we run simulations in our head. And then there's the metaphor me, which is when we literally consciously decide to see ourselves in different ways. When you outfit test in your imagination, when you imagine yourself taking on a different hobby and like what that would look like. That's the metaphor me. Oh, and then the next part of the structure of consciousness is narratization. Narratization, which I think we're mostly familiar with. We have to think of things as stories, as causes and effects. Even when there's not really causes and effects, we can't help but think of things as being in a sort of series of causes and effects. And this is kind of spatialization as well. We think of things in like a connected way, and we can't really help it. We can't really help it. We can't really help it. We bring things together. It's a very different thing than the butterfly effect. That's just a different thing. That's just a time travel issue. But it's also related to time. I'll give you that. It has something to do with time. And then I think this is the last one. Yes. The last bit of the structure of the mind, and I did think this one was pretty fun, is what Jaynes calls conciliation. Conciliation, which is kind of like spatialization, and it's kind of like narratization, and it's another thing that we do where we tend to bring things together. And we don't always do this, but we have a tendency to do this. And now, chat, I'm going to run you through an exercise. Okay? Bonsi, Bonisegas, thank you so much for your prime. Thank you. Okay, chat. Imagine for me a meadow and a butterfly. Yes? Okay, take that, scrap it, throw it out the window. Valerian, thank you for your prime. Thank you. Now, separate exercise. Think of trench warfare and Queen Cleopatra. Okay. Now, for the first exercise, I bet you imagined the butterfly in a meadow. Yeah? For the second exercise, probably you had two different things in your head. You probably imagined trench warfare and then a very separate Cleopatra on a throne. Conciliation is the tendency to bring together ideas when they feel compatible, like unprompted, kind of. We just tend to bring things together. But it doesn't always happen. Sometimes things are too different and we can't help but, and then we just don't conciliate them. I would imagine that people who are more open-minded probably conciliate even more, or have an easier time conciliating instinctively. And that is conciliation. I didn't tell you to imagine the butterfly in the meadow. I just said metaphor. I didn't say metaphor. I just said meadow and butterfly, and your brain was like, yeah, those go together. Those go together. And you did that consciously. You consciously put that butterfly in that meadow. And that was conciliation. I imagined Cleopatra in the trenches with them. I would say that means you're a very open-minded person. And I like conciliating. I think I also enjoy, I have a tendency to conciliate sometimes when other people wouldn't. It's a very yes and sort of instinct. And that is the end of the presentation review for today. So we talked about what consciousness isn't. We talked about how consciousness is built on the analog of the real world, or built out of the analog of the real world. Consciousness is the analog of the real world that we're constantly building through language. And we talked about the structure of consciousness. And that brings us all the way to chapter 3, where we are going to actually get into what the heck the bicameral mind is. Chapter 3, hopefully next stream, we're going to talk about people who are not conscious. But we're not going to do that this stream. Sleepy, I like your shirt. Thank you, Agan. I've worn it so often. I've worn it so often, truly, even on stream. This is one of my oldest faves. People who are not conscious like sheeple? No. No, people who are not conscious like Theseus. Like Theseus. Agan. Do you think the tree of knowledge was a metaphor for the beginning of human consciousness? I don't know. I don't know enough about it. Maybe. Probably. Who knows? Yeah. So, what was everyone's favorite thing that they learned or that they thought of? What was everyone's favorite metaphor moment? My favorite thing is just talking about, or like my favorite thing about these chapters is definitely just the absolute mindfuck of thinking about all of language as metaphors on metaphors on metaphors, and it like kind of ruining your day a little bit. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, you can't stop stopping in the middle of your sentences and thinking, metaphors, 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 metaphors everywhere. That's my favorite part. That's my favorite thing. I like that consciousness was in the heart before the brain. Ah, yeah. Very classic. Very classic, good, fun fact. I am a big fan of that one, too. My favorite was realizing how language and our understanding of the world is driven by metaphors, yes. The heads of ships, the arms of continents, everything, everything, everything. What's the Jaynes book named? The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind, Bicameral Mind, Bicameral Mind, Bicameral Mind. And you can find a lot of good YouTube videos. That's not true. No, it is true. You can find a number of good YouTube videos about this, but not that many. Like, not that many. But there are some. There are some. The labels of the metaphrand, etc., the mechanics. Yeah, I really like the how functional the language is of the metaphire and the metaphrand and the paraphires and the parabrands. Parabrands. Bicameral minds have two humps, both of which contain water. So true. So very true. I hate that everything's a metaphor. Nothing is original. Nothing. You're right. Right. Everything is a reference to other things. Everything is just a reference to other things. Consciousness is the most difficult problem in philosophy. Oh my god. So, another, 76 is when this was first published. But there is something to say that is relevant to all of this that has to do with like what the heck is happening with psychics? Because, I don't know if all y'all heard, but some pretty crazy stuff has come out recently about MK Ultra and the CIA using remote viewers and kind of confirming that, remote viewing is not necessarily a reliable way to do anything, but it has been done with extraordinary accuracy. I think there was going to be there's been some new declassified documents, Discros, and everyone. All I've heard about is the Manson stuff. There's more oh yeah. Yeah, remote viewing is when you, see stuff far away. Sometimes in space, sometimes in time. It's like the basic psychic stuff. But yeah, there's been some recent declassified documents, and there's like a whole court case, kind of like the alien one, if y'all remember that. Like it's like it's like public. I think you can watch the whole thing on YouTube. I still haven't watched the whole thing, so I don't want to talk too much about it. Obviously I haven't read all the documents. I just know some of the stuff that's happened, but I think I'm gonna do a dedicated stream about it, possibly at some point, just going over some of the new evidence. But obviously there's things that we can do consciously that are really interesting and complicated. And this has so obviously always been true, y'all. And it almost pisses me off that we need, like, government documents to be declassified for us to start taking it seriously. Because, like, obviously, like, I don't know. There's been so much weird shit that's happened on the planet Earth from people's minds. But that's just the way the world is sometimes. And sometimes you need government documents to be declassified. Yeah, dreams, so much crazy stuff. Like, there have been so many predictive dreams that have happened. There have been so many prophecies that have come true. And of course, there have been so many things that haven't come true. This is clearly not like a reliably predictable phenomena, but it to me, it's really clear that these are real phenomena. Like, people have had predictive dreams. People have had out-of-body experiences. Yeah? And we just don't quite understand it. But anyway. Yeah. Rationalism reigns real hard, and it makes people pigeonhole stuff that doesn't fit. I know. I think I kind of want to save a lot of my thoughts on this for when I'm talking about it for real. And also, I have exhausted my brain a little bit going over all these chapters, going all these bicameral mind, metafire, metaphren, parafire, paraphrens. I'm starting to burn out. Starting to burn out with my brain coming up with words and full sentences that I can whisper and softly speak into my little broken microphones. I'm not really into this kind of topic, but when someone who's interested in these topics explains it to you, it's really interesting to hear and learn. Thanks for sharing. You're so welcome, Jose. You're so welcome. Click, click, click. I think I'm just about ready to sign off for the night. How's Crazy? She's doing well. She's fine, but both me and Crazy are suffering from allergies. Huxela! 20 subs? Oh my gosh! Thank you! Oh my goodness, thank you so much! Thank you. I really do want to make more like educational-ish streams. And so it really means a lot to me whenever y'all seem to like it. Like, truly, because okay, I'm gonna talk a little bit more. And I think I'm gonna talk about this even more on a members only video on YouTube. But I'm trying to be less scared. I'm trying to be less scared about, like, taking myself seriously. Because I think, I feel like such an idiot for most of my life all the time. And I think I'm also generally pretty scared of people, of being in a position where I'm teaching people, because I feel very like what if people actually listen to what I say, and I don't know, that just makes me nervous and like scared and stuff. But as I get older, I'm speaking so badly right now, but as I get older, I'm trying to more highly value all of the work that I have done to educate myself. And I'm trying to have faith in the idea that I can do more good by, like, sharing the things that I've learned and talking about the things that I've learned, even if it's imperfect. I can do more with that than I can by keeping it all a secret because I have read a lot of books and I love all of the things that I've learned, and I want to be more comfortable sharing all of that with you, chat. So it truly does mean the world to me whenever it goes okay. You know what I mean? Whew. Truly does mean the world. Neglect is worse than abuse. So lay it on us. So true. So true. Thank you, everyone. And now, I am going to... We're gonna raid Tropical Stuck again because, they're doing GeoGuessr. Oh my gosh, and then they're doing Cyclonopedia. Y'all, Cyclonopedia is an incredible text. It's so interesting. It's like Lovecraftian horror, except instead of oceans and Cthulhu, it's about oil, okay? So ask Tropical about Cyclonopedia and about oil, and and they're gonna have a great time talking about it. So that's where we're gonna go. Let me make the raid happen. Alright, everyone. Thank you so much. It's been a fun night. Sleep well, sleep well, sleep well. Next time we're gonna talk even more about the bicameral mind, and I can't wait for it. Good night. And say hi to Tropical and ask them about Cyclonopedia, and ask them about oil. And this is the book that we talked about today, and